Craig, the Veterans for America First Vet Voice podcast with Jared Craig, and I have the pleasure today of interviewing a congressional candidate from the state of Massachusetts for the second congressional district of that state, Jeffrey Sossa-Paquette. And am I pronouncing that properly?
You pronounced that perfectly.
Fantastic, because I had a little question. So anyway, with that being said, Mr. Paquette, would you rather me refer to you as Jeffrey or formal?
Either or, Jeff or Jeffrey.
Okay, and same here, just refer to me as Jared. And I understand that you are a long-term resident of Massachusetts,
Yes, I am.
and you've raised a family there and some businesses there. Could you tell the viewers a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. You know, when I was 16 years old, unfortunately, I'll move my way through this quickly. I apologize. My dad went to jail when I was 16 years old for molesting my sisters, and I was able to successfully hold him in jail for the whole 20 years of his sentence. That, changed my life as a young man and stuff. Having to leave school at 16, I got 2 jobs to help my mom and myself be able to take care of my brothers and sisters, make sure my mom didn't lose the house. I had wonderful of my father. I started my first company when I was 23 years old, which was a chain of pet stores. I built that company to a chain of 10 stores, sold it to Petco when I was 29 years old. Went back to school at that point, got my high school diploma and started college at Becker University, and really jumped around in what my studies were, because at that point, the degree was not what was important to me. It was more about what was important to me that I wanted to learn about. So, I've got about 160 credits that, somewhere if I wanted to put it to a degree, I would. But to this day at 52, I still take classes, but they're what I pick and choose to take. Moving that forward, after I built and sold my first company, I focused on myself and achieving my American dream. And what I mean by that is not financially. I had pulled myself from nothing. And at 29 years old, I was a self-made millionaire and stuff. So I really focused on the other things that were missing in life. And, being a gay man, I was determined that I was going to be able to build the same family that my brothers and sisters could. So I set out to change the laws in New Hampshire 22 years ago, and was successful. I adopted my daughter, Ashley. I was there when she was born and handed to me before she was even cleaned up. So we were the first openly gay adoption to be performed in New Hampshire, paving the pathway for others. Moving that ball, a little bit more forward. I, put my hand into restaurants, and, we can't all be successful at everything. That was my failure and major strikeout. I'll never put money into a restaurant again.
You're not alone there. So,
and so, as I say, that was the fastest $1 million I ever made or lost. But from there, I got into the childcare business, which I've been in now for the last 18 years. I've had 2,600 families come through my care. We got our son Ryland and stuff. When I got the call from the state on Ryland was born addicted to heroin. And I thought I was just helping. So me and Julian weren't necessarily looking to adopt again, other than we were like, yeah, we'll help. Long story short, moved that ball forward and stuff. Things didn't work out necessarily for mom at that particular moment. I filed the adoption papers on Ryland when he was 3.5. And now, knock on wood, mom is doing well. And Ryland has had a relationship with his birth mother now for the last several years, where he gets to go to New Hampshire once a month for the weekend, stays with my family, gets to see his birth mom and build that relationship. So I'm happy that his birth mother is doing better. That's good for her and for Ryland. And then Julian, which is where the Sossa-Paquette comes in. Julian was my husband and stuff, was brought to this country from Colombia when he was 10 years old with 2 other girls. They were, so when, I met my husband, Julian, and stuff, a few years into it and stuff, I got to learn really what had happened to him and the 2 girls that were taken with him from Colombia. And they were unfortunately trafficked to America. They spent about 4.5 years held in captivity in Texas. Julian got away when he was 15 years old and made his way to Boston. And then I met Julian when he was 25. And through, kind of talking and, really the nightmares and the things that happen when he's trying to sleep, it's like, okay, what's going on with you? And, through time and stuff, Julian was comfortable enough to start to tell me what had happened. So he basically spent, I want to say about 7-8 years and a lot of intensive therapy, with, being hypnotized, chemical hypnotation, all the different things to help Julian process really what had been done to him over a 4.5-year period, and how he was able to, I don't want return himself to himself, for lack of a different way to say that. But to make peace is the best way for me to be able to say that, as much as that you can. Then what we realized and stuff in human trafficking, or what I realized as an American, was when I took him to immigration, getting asylum was going to be very easy. However, what I didn't understand as an American and stuff is that victims that have been trafficked from another country, they don't talk and stuff in fear of what happens to their family back in the homes that they come from. Julian was no different. His older brother interfered and stopped him from, giving immigration and everybody what they needed, which then put us in an uncomfortable situation of, okay, how do we fix this? So we could, put Julian on DACA, but DACA, as we all know, does not make him legal, does not make him a citizen of the United States, and marrying an American citizen doesn't give him that right either. So then we went to immigration directly and said, what is it that we need to do? So we ordered Julian out of the country. We asked immigration to order him out of America and return to Colombia. And it took about 6 months. We got that letter from immigration saying, Julian Sossa-Paquette, you have been ordered out of the United States. You have 10 days to leave and come back if there's any opportunity in stamping your paperwork. Well, we lost 3 days in the mailing. So the next morning, I put him on a plane back to Colombia. He spent 4 days with his mom because he hadn't seen her in almost 20 years. And then he flew back to America, to Miami. And it took about 18 hours, and we got all of his paperwork done. They stamped it. I got a phone call that I'll see you back in Boston in about 3 hours. I'm on my way. Julian gets his American citizenship next week. And the reason when we say next week, Julian could have gotten his citizenship 8 years ago. He made a conscious decision after watching everything happening in our country that he was never going to be accused that he cut the line or he married an American, which cut the line. So he deliberately decided, I will wait the whole 10 years like everybody else. And so that's what we did. And he should have gotten his citizenship actually 2 weeks ago. He did his test, everything. They had his name spelt wrong, so they couldn't swear him in. We got to fix the paperwork, wait for the letter, and then come back and get you sworn in. So he just got the letter today, so he'll get his citizenship next week.
Stories we don't hear about on mainstream media. We don't hear the stories of those that make the sacrifice of going back to their home country and getting the consulate to come here through the proper process. So I congratulate him and yourself for going through that process and reaching the end of it. I've had some clients and friends of mine that have gone through that same process also, and it's a great thing to celebrate. And new citizens, I believe, are way more patriotic than a lot of our natural born citizens. I'll leave that there. So
yeah, I was just gonna say, Julian, if Julian was on this call with us, he would tell you, despite how he was brought to America or any of the above, he is living proof of the American dream. We have a beautiful family, beautiful children, a successful business, and he does not look back, and he absolutely does not blame America for what happened to him as a child. That had nothing to do, well, as far as how he got here. But, so when I say that, human trafficking is important to me and stuff, not only the years of watching Julian go through everything there, being in the childcare business, I work with a lot of families of refugees that have been brought to my childcare center because I only work with families that are distressed or below the poverty line. So I've also worked with lots of families that have been, sexually trafficked to the country. Babies have been born out of that, and working with those mothers and just seeing how remarkably well these women and these children have been hanging, lifting over the years and stuff. And I think one of the things that surprises me, that I think would surprise a lot of Americans, is no human trafficked victim that I'm seeing will ever tell you that they're a victim. They're excited to be here in America and kind of trying to close the door behind them of what caused it. I think there's a lot of misnomer out there, but it's $100 billion industry here in America, or 150 billion worldwide. The statistics that came out of Washington did stuff on Homeland Security. 2021, we had 10.1 million children under the age of 18 years old being trafficked here in America. And I asked myself, how can America say we're a free country if we have this kind of human slaves in our country? And so we need to talk about it and solve it. It's kind of concerning to me that you really don't see our politicians down in DC talking about it. Donald Trump did, and certainly was trying to make headway with it and stuff. But other than that, you don't see a lot of people that understand what's going on, or they automatically just point to the border and think that people coming over the border, that's what I mean by human trafficking. And I'm like, no, I mean human trafficking of the worst possible kind.
Well, Jeffrey, I have to say, you don't sound like a politician. You sound more like a concerned citizen. I think that's very refreshing. So share with the listeners or viewers what your platform is, in addition to the human trafficking fight that you have. What other platform issues that set you apart from your opponent in this race?
And so, one of the very first things is I believe that, being in business for 30 something years, you run a budget. You don't deficit spend. So, the first commitment I've made to every citizen here in District 2 and the state is I will cut this nation's credit card. I will not vote for deficit spending. We must live within our means. We are not overtaxed. We overspend. And so we need to get government control back in our spending and return as much as we can back to the states and get it out of the federal government. So I'm going to be very focused on, cutting our deficit and cutting our spending and stuff so that is operating correctly. I'm very focused on our veterans and stuff right here in my own district. I have 66,000 veterans that do not have appropriate housing. And for the life of me, I can't figure out, we've had the same congressman for 30 years. How can I possibly have 66,000 veterans that don't have appropriate housing or can't afford the housing that they do have? So I'm going to be very focused on that and stuff. We've got 280 old factories and buildings that have been closed for the last 20 years that no one's doing anything with them. And I'm like, absolutely not. We're going to bring grant money back to these plants. If they can reopen as a business, fine. If they can't, turn them into housing for our veterans, for our seniors, and for our families that are below the poverty line, and do something with these buildings and stuff and start, making appropriate housing and stuff that works for everybody. When I look at our military and stuff, I do not believe America should ever get involved again in any war that is directly related to energy. And I do not believe in using our military for nation building. We watched that in Afghanistan for 20 years and we cannot repeat that. That's not what our military is for. So those are, a few there. And then parents' rights and school rights. I'm all about school choice vouchers that allow the parents to take those dollars and educate their children wherever they are comfortable. And, we need to get away from, or really not get away from, we need to hold these unions accountable that brought our schools and our communities to their knees. Since when does a teachers union and stuff wipe out America for a year and a half, causing, hundreds of thousands of businesses to go out of businesses because the schools wouldn't reopen, therefore the businesses couldn't reopen. So I don't blame the government on that. I genuinely blame the teachers unions for doing this. And I think there needs to be some hearings on how do we reel unions in. Unions have a good purpose, but it was never the intention when unions were formed that they could literally bring the country to its knees and almost bankrupt us.
Well, Jeffrey, I appreciate your time and your sharing of your personal story. And Tell the viewers and listeners how they can get in touch with you, your website, your social media, your phone number, so they can tell their friends and family to go vote for Jeffrey Sossa-Paquette in Massachusetts' 2nd Congressional District in November.
Yeah, you can go to my website, which is Jeffrey, numeric number 4, Congress.com. So jeffreyforcongress.com. You can email me at Jeffrey at jeff4congress.com. That's my personal email. You can also call my personal phone number, which is 508-823-8484. And I would be happy to speak with anybody.
And you do take donations on your website, I'm sure.
Yes, I do.
Well, I always tell people to put their money where their candidate is. And we can all have great wishes and hopes, but unless we support our candidates, we're going to hit a brick wall, and we need to have a red wave this year.
Yeah.
So,
and one thing I'd give to all donors and stuff is this is how I funded my campaign. I refuse to sell out to PACs, special interest, or corporations. So I put $241,000 so far of my own money into the campaign, matching every citizen's donation dollar for dollar. I want to win this seat back after 30 years, saying I did it solely with the citizens and myself, that there was never a dollar that came into this campaign that was of special interest or any PAC or groups and stuff that would have, funded my campaign and stuff. So we've kept this campaign clean and honest.
Well, that's nice to hear and refreshing. Once again, I have had the pleasure of speaking with you today, Jeffrey Sossa-Paquette from Massachusetts Congressional District number 2. And I look forward to seeing you on the media and everywhere, and most importantly, in Congress.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day, Jared.
Thank you.